Andrew and Michael are a little more subversive than most writers I know. You never know what they're going to come up with separately. As a duo, there's the danger of a kind of uncontrolled chain reaction, that all boundaries between genres might be irrevocably breached in bringing these two together, that there will be a kind of free and chaotic mixing between genres from which we might never fully recover. I at least admit some trepidation. But on the bright side, Michael Martone and Andrew Monson can be counted upon to harness their powers of appropriation and hybridization for good, not evil. So I feel compelled to introduce them in a slightly hybridized fashion, so here goes. Michael Martone lives in Tuscaloosa, Arizona, and teaches at the University of Alabama. Michael Martone was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was born and grew up in Houghton, Michigan. I've been reading his work with admiration since we both attended Indiana University as undergrads. For many years, he's been at the forefront of American innovative prose and has won a loyal following and many accolades. His most recent book is a hybridized anthology, Winesburg, Indiana, and the book he's working on now, Amish in Space, imagines a future Indiana in which nothing much happens in that Indiana either. And here's something you won't hear anywhere else. Michael has given me permission to reveal today that he was the actual writer of Roland Barthes by Roland Barthes. Andrew Monson was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was born and grew up in Houghton, Michigan. He's been feted widely, and his book Vanishing Point was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, and his book Neck Deep was selected by Robert Polito for the Grable Nonfiction Prize. Of Monson's most recent work, Letter to a Future Lover, NPR calls it breathtakingly original. Like Michael, he's adept at many forms, publishing fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. I can likewise reveal today that Andrew Monson is the actual writer of Michael Martone by Michael Martone. So please welcome Michael Monson and Andrew Martone.
At the last Nonfiction Now conference I attended, I was on a panel in which a young man, I forget his name appropriately, was advocating for a purely anonymous essay. Like he was some sort of collective trying to write and publish essays anonymously in order to remove the ego from the I or the self-aggrandizing quality of writing from the writing. I'm not remembering real well, I should admit, but that idea stuck with me, in part because of my reaction to it. That's outrageous, I thought, at the time, with some exclamation points attached. The essay is freaking about the I. That's its whole point, making a simulation of the self, well, the persona or the protagonist of the self, a kind of software for the reader to run on their own hardware. Take away the I and take away the essay. Why would you even want me to do that? I still think it's nuts, but the ferocity of my response made me suspicious, in the way that one should be suspicious of too strong reactions to minor phenomena. I wondered later, what threat does that idea pose?
I'll be reading a series of keys tonight, and I'll be assisted by my key keeper here in the front row. So I will read a variety of essays. I do not know the sequence, and I don't know if they'll connect together. So we'll see how it goes. Here's the first one. Can you hear okay?
Yes.
Single Ruby. I was and am a single Ruby, not, alas, a double Ruby. I am referring to my status as a member of the National Forensic League, the NFL, now the National Speech and Debate Association, I suppose because of the confusion with the other NFL. Yes, a speech and debate society that awarded various levels of achievement, the single Ruby being the penultimate gem. It was the cross-X debate category of competition that tripped me up from obtaining the double. I did not cotton to the question debated, did not like the style of speech, the hyper-literatures or litanies of evidence, and the tracking of argument on flowcharts. I preferred the individual categories: extemp, impromptu, dramatic and comic interp, poetry, original oratory, after dinner speaking, the last a kind of keynote address. So, full disclosure, I stand here before you a mere single Ruby forensic expert. Not the double. Damn you, debate. Allow me then to present evidence of my credentials. Here, on my lapel, you will notice a slight device, a silver soft metal pin of the type that is often presented by organizations, fellowships, associations, consisting of a vertical bar, a thin cylinder with a loop at the top, and there, and slightly below it, look, that octagonal logo of the NFL, with the single ruby winking in the sinister NFL stamped on the band. These are strange little trinkets, aren't they? These honorary badges to indicate initiation into clubs, leagues, associations, fraternities. On my campus, the engineering, business, and chemistry honoraries have taken little devices like this and enlarged them to gargantuan size and set them in stone like a Thorian sword, monuments of these strange twisted bits of metal. These lapel pins, perhaps you all have one or two. Yes, anybody NFL out there? Double Ruby, yeah. These lapel pins, perhaps you all have one or two, evolved from a type of key. If you were a member of the Key Club, you were presented with a Key Club pin that was the stylized and streamlined key. Once these keys were functional, the loop on the top attached to its pocket watch's chain, Phi Beta Kappa, there displayed on your vest. The key's proximity to the pocket watch, a clue then, even as it evolved into a boastful fop alone. These abstract devices then were once actual keys to wind the pocket watch, now a vestigial appendage. So this then is the first key of this stem-winding keynote speech about keys.
Each day in my running route takes me by a particular cholla, a beautiful sort of cactus with bristles of long yellow-white spines that from a distance can seem almost soft, hence the name for one type of this cholla, teddy bear. To be clear, you do not want to hug it close. This cholla adorns the entry to a small wild area on a few acres of city property that I like to run through in part to remind myself of what the city used to be. Wild, 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 in an often impassable and brutal way. I don't know who owns this little patch or why it's not developed. Another essayist might do well to run that question down. But twice in the last few months, I've brushed by the cholla, not even touching it, I was sure, only to find a chunk of it stuck in the dry skin on the very end of my elbow that's hard to look at otherwise. Each time I was horrified to be penetrated so easily, so casually, without notice. And it's physically unpleasant, too. When the cactus gets in your skin, the moisture causes the spines to swell and curl, making them difficult to remove. Still, I have to admire the plant. The easy detaching of the chunk is an effective defense mechanism as well as a reproductive strategy. My second cholla-ing was worse than the first, mostly because of intellectual shame. Did I learn nothing in the first encounter?
Reliquary. I searched using the keywords relics, St. Nicholas, World Trade Center, 9/11, to no avail. I must have dreamed this. The priest on the mound of rubble of the South Tower, piled on the ruin of what had once been the Greek Orthodox Church of St. Nicholas, buried beneath. Looking for the church's altar reliquary, and the relics kept inside. A church's relic, the enduring bits of bone, the stains of blood, the splinter of the true cross, is a key to the church's ignition switch. Its consecration on the dashboard altar charges the church, charges it from a secular space into a sacred one. A key fit into the casket snug in its stone. And it was this image of a priest scrambling over the wreckage of that day that lodged in my mind, along with all those other images indelibly inscribed in bits and bytes, while scores of others searched through the grounded down round of ground zero, recovering the remains of the newly martyred, the horrific forensic evidence, and yes, the new relics of the dead. This priest was looking for old bones, evidence of the persistence of catastrophe and hope with all its benign evil. What was hope doing in Pandora's box of evils? He needs to find the right relics in this vast landscape of relics. I think of this now every time I misplace my keys, lost in the clutter of neglect and of the things I have accumulated. The frustration of not being able to proceed, go forward, do anything until the sliver of cheap metal is back in my hand. As I search, I think of that search and the way that tiny, tiny key turns everything, time and space inside out, as they turn in the lock. And I think of Bishop's line about how losing isn't hard to master, and how she rhymes that word with the sorrowful irony and paradox with disaster.
So Michael and I were invited here to give a keynote address, which you may know is meant to set the tone, to lay out some key ideas for the conference. But neither he nor I really wanted to wear those clothes, to be honest. Michael never has been much for thesisizing. As he told me in an email, I am with the writing itself, not interested that much in insight or depth, but of surface. And what surfaces? When I think of Michael's work, I think of the intricacy of his surfaces. There are so many of them littered across genres, and they are so spectacularly detailed. He's being a little disingenuous, I think. A surface can also have depth. Think of shag carpet, or the complexity of fractals, or how Velcro looks under a microscope, or how anything does if you look at it closely enough. And anyway, it's easy enough to get bits of Michael's surfaces hooked into you, even if you're not like me, a sort of person with an extremely permeable surface.
Walking dead man. You will find them still in old office buildings, industrial lofts, warehouses. You will mistake them for antique bottle cap openers. They've been painted over, the stamped legend, Detex Watch Clock Station, on the lid, melting into the paint on top. That enameled lid covers a little cast metal cup, and the ashtray, an outlet cover, a font for holy water. If you are luckier still, you can hinge that lid open, and still more luck, find inside some type of key, a key attached to a heavy-duty chain riveted to the side of the receptacle. It is a jewel box with the key, the jewel. They are near doors usually, the ends of hallways. You think the key has something to do with the nearby door, but the chain doesn't reach to the door. The strange-shaped key is leashed to an obsolete past. You have discovered a watch clock station, a part of a cybernetic, though analog system that married a man with a machine. A canteen-sized clock, strapped over the shoulder, the watchman made his rounds and moved from station to station, lifting the lids and extracting the key found hidden there, keying each into the clock on his hip, and the clock recording the time and his place in time. See, the readout would say, you were here, and then here. The machine was a walking dead man, proof that you moved and you weren't asleep at your post, curling up like a key in some cubby. I look for them still, these industrial cocoons, and the keys that long ago wound up a watchman.
Thomas Dye, a writer named for Tom Sawyer, tells me that another key is quay, as in Q-U-A-Y, which should be pronounced key. He means you pronounce it key. I don't know why I am astonished by the language's ability to still surprise, but I am, and here I get a little jolt. Have I ever mispronounced it in conversation? Probably. Americans only sometimes pronounce it key. Other times they pronounce it K or quay. I've always thought that quay, conditioned as I am to think of the world of Q's and U's that way. The essayist's world is all Q's and U's, questions thrown into the unknown. Hopefully we get something back in answer. If we're doing it right, our questions will reflect. But it's also queer, the way that if we get enough eyes to sing together, or even soloing in parallel, they become an us. Is that not why we are here together? To see what we all have to say something, to make some meaning together? Degata says that the world we all know is already a nonfiction. Let the essay be what we make of it. That's from his forthcoming The Making of the American Essay, the third and last in the anthology trilogy from Grey Wolf. To essay is to interpose the I between world and reader, to make something fantastic of the wall. To essay is to make a circuit that takes on charge as it travels between the two. That magic's in the trip the electric takes, and the shapes it makes, or can be made to make, what it illuminates, a neon line in Tucson nighttime against the sky or brain. But the action's not just in the in-between, it's also in the we, not just the make, in the what we make of it. We essayists are arrayed on a wall between the world and everybody else. Y'all need us on that wall. If it were not for us, you would be overwhelmed with information.
Hidden in plain sight. It seems I never carry any cash anymore. Instead, money is the simple swipe transmission of the acrobatic magnetic zeros and ones from one virtual column to another. But now when I do carry a buck or two in my blindfold, or my billfold for tips at a vending machine, I still unfold the paper to look at the artwork and then note all the changes in the paper and printing to spoil counterfeiting or to see if there is a message scribbled there during the circulation. But also, always I look for the key. As a child, you aren't entrusted with keys. The adults control the locks, the switches, the ignitions. I remember my father's key ring, pedestrian jewelry, in the bowl by the door with his change and wallet. And I remember the riddle as he removed the keys from that pile of his pocket, detritus, and that remained. Find the key, he said. Find the key there. There was a key in there someplace, with the pocket knife, attractive and forbidden. The broken roll of lifesavers, the scraps of paper and receipts, the pencil nub, the crumpled bills. He twirled the keys on his finger. It was in there, he said. I looked and looked for that key. The treasure now, not the key to the treasure. I turned the wallet inside out, the photos and the mass cards, the phone numbers and the business cards. Everything became a thing itself. And I would look into the world of what was pictured and what was printed. And there I found it in the dollar bill. One of the many etched pictures and numbers, the sunlight seal of the treasury, and there, almost an eyelash, the key, not a key, but the key. The key all these years later, my cookie, my Madeleine. I scan for it in the rare dollar I dispense or receive. It opens me up as I unfold it. It reminds me, turns something on in me. Now when I have it, I throw my change in a bowl by the door, along with my keys, the poor contents of my pockets, next to the depleted pile of my dead dad's keys that fit nothing anymore, but ignite a pedestrian ring of objective correlatives, the little store of minuscule moments.
A writer is a permeable surface. Being an essay writer, by virtue of it being our job to be an I and to be an I, to take the world and let it stick to us and chew it, means that we should strive to be permeable surfaces. Well, you can't be entirely permeable. You have to live and not just be penetrated everywhere. And there's no magic in a strainer, a term for a debris deposit that gathers just below a river's surface. According to essayist Paige Buono, that gathers nothing. What's interesting is how it separates what gets in and what gets caught. Maybe I'm saying we're a set of strainers, of sieves, of filters, of whatever metaphor you like the best. What's interesting is what gets in and doesn't get out, or doesn't get out untouched by the black box of us that makes up an I. Pusha T decodes the song Keys Open Doors online for Jay-Z's YouTube channel. I wouldn't know that except for Caleb Klitschke. I'd heard of clips, of course. I'm not that white or that disconnected yet. But I couldn't say that I was a fan. Still can't. But I like the key, as he explains, is short for kilo, a subject that the Border Patrol know enough about their impossible task to make impermeable the essentially permeable. The song is about making money, and how that money pays for studio time, and how T had to sell drugs in the interim between their first and second albums to stay afloat, and how they got pissed to see people knocking off their style, rapping about selling drugs when they clearly ain't sold none. The truth in nonfiction debate, Klitschke reminds me, has been prominent in hip-hop for a long time. How much is it wise to front in the service of truth or art, and why, for how long, and to what ends?
The Treasure House. It was called the Treasure House, the house Captain Kangaroo inhabited. Captain Kangaroo, a television show for children, began in the year of my birth, running all mornings and broadcast on CBS in various forms until 1984. It opened with keys, I remember, keys that as they danced in the captain's hands did not make music, but cued a music. A bouncy jingle that jingled as long as the captain agitated the keys. There was a big old key on a big old metal ring. The music skipped along, the sound of the keys underneath, a jaunty theme lisped and stuttered until the captain hooked the ring on a nail in the side of a big cabinet, cabinet where later the puppets Bunny Rabbit and Mr. Moose would gyre and gimble. The key ring placed on the nail, silence. The captain would lift the ring off the nail. The music would take up where it left off. On the hook, silent, off. The bouncy theme bounced around the treasure house when it was picked up. This was thrilling. This narrowly defined tolerance between noise and nothing. I held my breath. The lesson of suspense. It was as if the ring and not the keys were the key to this. The switch. I went back just now to look and watch up this bit on old kinescopes, only to discover something else. I had remembered incorrectly. I had remembered the captain opening the treasure house with the musical key from the outside, but I was wrong. He unlocked the door from the inside. The door of the treasure house was locked with a key on the inside, not out.
Since that one panel years ago, I've thought a lot about collaboration and the essay. I started a website called Essay Daily in part to foment conversations like this one, to bring a few of us together in a created space. But I still can't get my head around trying to remove the I in essay. But I've become more aware of the ways in which my own work acts like a carrier for whatever I've been reading or watching or playing. Here's a little spiky chunk that's curled its way into me. Edward Hoagland in Best American Essays, 1999. Essays are how we speak to one another in print. Well, print doesn't cover it anymore. But the idea of speaking publicly and to each other, not just in the abstract, but in the specific, feels important. Reading gives us a kind of permission or ideas or just pisses us off. That's a kind of gift if it spurs us to action or to our own essaying. So what if I tried to make myself, or what if I thought, if I tried to make myself more permeable? What if I invited others to join me in this party and become a we, not just metaphorically? So I did invite some others to the party. This essay is in part made up of others' keys. You could call it a key party, I suppose, apocryphal as those may be. They gave me theirs, I gave them mine. We swapped some spit back and forth. At the end, someone's prose went home with someone else's.
Arrowing. They are called by the United States Postal Service arrow keys. Arrow for the arrow that is conspicuously stamped on them. Their existence is semi-secret, perhaps just the stuff of legend now, but it makes sense. There should be just one key to all the locks, to that lock all the locked boxes overseen by the PO. The drop and relay boxes, the banks of apartment mailboxes, the safes and the cabinets. Of course, there would be one key that opens and secures all of these portals. The letter carrier can't be carrying an individual key for each lock or he or she interacts with each day. The arrow keys generated considerable anxiety. They are shrouded in mystery. A theft of one raises alarm, as it should, for the space it regulates. The border between the public space and the private space is fraught, though we forget it. We forget that Hermes, the messenger, the godly postman, is also the patron of bankers and thieves. He is found in the space between spaces, here in the nether, here or there. The arrow fits the box that holds Schrodinger's cat. The arrow key arrows a key that opens the paradox of Zeno, the missile that can be proved never to hit its mark, moving by halves infinitely between the here and there, the now and then, the here and now, and the there and then.
The key to the palate expander, a medieval-seeming bit of orthodonture installed in your mouth to widen the jaw gradually, must be inserted in the mouth in the designated hole in front of the contraption, cranked toward the back, and released. It is important that it hurts, and hurt it does. You will want to remember the particular qualities of this pain. A blogger says, liquid Advil 30 minutes before the cranking of the key and ice after will help your child tolerate the pain. As Jessica Malorty points out, the instructional YouTube video for the practice, she calls it correctly a key, how to use the key, still seems to be ineffective, judging from the befuddlement of the commenters. In her words, so no key is perfect, or perhaps no key user is perfect. To hold the key in your hand is no guarantee of success, as any fairy tale or orthodontist could tell you. And the accreting instinct, the hoarding of quotations, the inscribing of others' words and thoughts in memory or on a commonplace book. In the age of the internet, it just gets faster and broader and easier. I start PDFing all the essays that I love and keeping them on the cloud. Twitter brings me baubles every day this way. It's too much to keep up with. This is inescapable, and we all know, but such a pleasure. I'm on a flight as I write this line. Even with the internet off, I can barely keep my eyes off my seatmate's book. Saramago's sentences start to assert themselves in me. By the time I land, I'll be mostly Saramago. I don't even like Saramago.
Transition object. Hands behind the back, men mainly as they stroll on the Volta. They are working something in their hands. You can hear the clatter and the click, too, if you are close enough. The tapping task, worry beads are being worried. Comboloid, the string trinket, can be found everywhere in the street markets and souvenir shops of Greece, as Greek maybe as souvlaki, ubiquitous as matai, the sea blue evil eye, as iconic as amputated marble, beady-eyed icons. not religious these beads, usually sliding freely on a looped string the width of 2 palms, organic material, coral, shell, amber, thought to be more handy to handle, though I have a stainless steel set in my pocket. Odd number of beads, usually one more than a multiple of 4, say 4 times 4. You worry the worry beads. You thread them through the fingers, pinch and count them, toss them and tether a little flip, and feel them spill back into your palm while you talk, while you stroll, while you lean, while you think, while you figure, while you try to forget, try to remember. Remember, you let your fingers do the walking while you walk. You are working a combination, attempting to find the correct manipulation, not to open something up so much as to unlock calm, to quiet, not to quit but quiet, not playground of the devil, these busy hands. In a pinch, a set of keys will do, a poor substitute, you know, something to fiddle with, to fidget through, metal conductors of that nervous energy. The hands that hold the keys manipulate them. Finger exercises. The hands, little complex engines, complexly purring, idling with intent or indifference. Worrying, worry. Worrying, worry. These transition objects, like the lock of your hair you twirl, a thread through your fingers, the cheek you scratch, the ear you pull. You are here and you are elsewhere. Your fingers, your hands are negotiating the transition between and easing the separation from, unlocking the geared and flanged repetitive mechanics of fret, faint, fright, the tumbling tumblers of worry.
Let's do that instead. I offered Martone a sticky key too. In some of my disambiguations, I ran across Keystone, Indiana. There's not much to Keystone, Indiana on the web. An unincorporated community in Chester Township, Wells County, Indiana. It's where West 1000 South and South 200 West intersect, it looks like, and a train track runs kind of by it. I don't know much about Indiana. Michael is the Indiana expert, but he hadn't heard of it. Google Map had mapped it only briefly in low res, and you can pace through it digitally. Or visit a point just west of it in the Google Photosphere, a user-contributed kind of image wiki. You can pan 360 degrees from the very center of Keystone, Indiana. The shot features 3 houses. I fixate on the closest one, with a minivan and 2 trucks parked out front, and an abandoned kid's bike resting in the grass. In the distance, I can see a boat. Rotate the view around, and I see these weird repeated images, what looks like a leaf maybe caught in the air. And you can see like 3 ones in the upper left, and ones in the kind of center, and there's 2 right here in the center here. Somehow like they got leaf and it's propagated across the shot. I don't know how. And then they propagate all the way through the panorama. This is Raider Country, a sign reads. The image, it turns out, is provided by Stephanie Heath. I imagine one of these, the one with the bike maybe, is her home. It's a key that she's offered me. Is it any wonder that the age of the essay, by far the most obviously rhizomatic literary form, corresponds with the age of the internet? So this essay we are composing here together will be online soon with a way for you to add to it. What was sticky that you took from this? How will you bear what you had to sit through away, and what will you make of it?
Gravity works. It's so boring watching a baby on the edge, just into the toddler on the edge of everything, getting into everything. He must be watched constantly, and it is boring, this monitoring of a child as the child tries, essays, everything over and over. We have developed a restraint. We call it a high chair. And we bundle the baby off to it. It looks downright medieval, this high chair with its belts and its sliding tray table that pins him into it. The baby, so encumbered, writhes and wriggles, all ampersands. We have learned to throw things onto the tray, distractions. Often it is cereal. It is almost always Cheerios. Why Cheerios? Cheerless Cheerios. But it is, and the baby immediately responds, grasping and gasping, O-ing after the little O's. They are like little stemless keys, all bow, that then he inserts into any and all holes. Tests the fit, nose, ears, eyes even. Even as we begin to remember something about the hazard of choking hazard. The kid has found where the Cheerios work. The mouth, yes, that's the ticket. And the child will commence to push all these buttons of oats down that open patch. Then what do? We have played the Cheerio card. The baby looks up at you intently, a brown study of crumbs. And then we do it. We do it even when we know we shouldn't do it. We dig deep into our pockets, withdraw our key ring. Now, here is an authentic choking hazard. But we are at our wits' end, too tired, and you can't leave him worming in that high chair to go look for the oversized, toothy teething keys, pastel-colored, soft edge, designed and marketed for this very moment, when we are about to serve up the real keys. The keys clatter on the tray. Instantly, the child attempts to unlock this mystery. The empty vessel he is, ears, nose, mouth, scratching the tabula rasa of his still soft-spotted skull. Suddenly, he leans over, off to the side of the high chair, and drops the keys. They fall. They make a confused clatter on the kitchen floor. Then the baby does this. He looks at the keys on the floor. He looks at you. He looks at the keys on the floor. You know what you are to do. You know what you will do. You pick up the keys and place them on the tray once more. And immediately, they are once more on the floor. Again with the looking. Again with the picking up and the dropping. This can go on, it seems, for hours. Gravity works, we cry out. But for this kid, it doesn't. The next release, the keys might drop up. The keys are the key as they fall. As they fall, they open for us. They open for us if we can just get past the tedium to possibility, that space to wonder about wonder.
You can kind of read that, right? The Piggly Wiggly Meat Manual diagram from 1934 that Will gave me couldn't be a better fit to open up my brain. Perhaps you know I'm fond of diagrams, particularly useless ones like this, since, as Will points out, 22 arrows leading to a man in a 1934 Piggly Wiggly butcher's outfit is too many to make anything out of the image or what we're apparently being directed to. It makes a maze of a man. Here is man made porous, each arrow penetrating his face or clothes. Will writes, there is also a value in knowing how to be all things to all people, even if that means being pierced every day by many different arrows. And what's notable for me about it is that the arrows are white. They make literal inroads from the white space surrounding him. The whole world outside of him, the model butcher. Is he even a butcher? One imagines they wouldn't hire an actor to play the part for a photograph for their manual. So I wonder who he is and what his life is like. Another line of research for another essay. It amounts to a lot of pressure, doesn't it? Just for one grainy-looking man. I asked to take a photograph of the woman with the tattoos at a Tucson Zinburger, restaurant with an annoyingly banal name. Guess what they serve? Once language exists to only convey information it is dying, Richard Hugo tells me about 40 years before, Then it is ground into meat and served at the Tucson Zinburger. I do like to gape. At tattoos, one can gape more openly. What else are they for if not display? I can't quite make out all the text. You in my safe, locked, the key buried, misspelled. Unfortunately, I don't have the heart to tell her, in my soul. There is an image of a lock hole that I have the urge to insert something into. All I have left of the woman is the photograph, a little cleavage in it, a smaller tap of a sexy woman removing stockings visible just barely on the left tit.
The master key. The master key was attached to a metal hoop that slipped over my head, worn like a noose or a necktie, designed so as to keep my hands free to handle the luggage, and this was all before roller bags. I was a night auditor at a Marriott 11 to 7 shift. I ran room and tax in the early morning, balanced the house, working with only 2 other auditors for the restaurant and bar, old-timers who had seen it all and made me, the kid, bellhop the bags up for late check-ins. I wore the key ring around my neck all night as I keyed in the numbers on the massive NCR 442, balancing out the folios for all 254 rooms, whose spare keys needed to be found and fit back into the cubby slots behind the desk. The room keys still were tagged with the plastic fobs that instructed the absent-minded customer to slip the key in any mailbox and it would be returned. Like a rosary, the master key had its loop, and I wore that draped around my neck, a scapula that bounced against my chest as I walked the firewalk through the halls, checked the water heaters for the blue pilot flame, a little jingle, the belled cat as I prowled. The master key could even open the doors pinned out, a method to force a guest to see the desk and settle accounts. In the morning, the big ring around my neck, I rang up the rooms, made the wake-up calls on the old PBX, fitting home the cord into the socket and toggling the ring. We had a crazy alarm clock that could be set every 15 minutes. This was all analog, of course, and back then Marriott had a policy that if a call wasn't answered, someone had to go up to the room and use the master key, make sure that business trade would not miss that morning meeting. Most times, the guests were already gone, or in the shower, or the television was too loud. Due diligence done. The old-timers always made me go, reminding me that suicides always left wake-up calls. They didn't want to be saved, they just wanted to be found. The key thumping on my blazer, my heart thumping there. I'd find the room and knock, and then, when there was no answer, remove the key from my neck, fit it into the lock, open the door, and it would always open, and I'd look inside.
It's hard not to be in love with restroom keys, public restroom keys, and the relief that they represent. This is the one from Ebony Magazine. If you go to Ebony Magazine, you need the bathroom key. This is what you get. I've begun to make a list of the ridiculous things with which they're adorned or duct taped so as not to be carried off or lost. A dowel, a serving spoon, a mini baseball bat, a rubber chicken, a ruler, a gavel stick, a drawer pull, a metal whisk, a back scratcher, 2 bookends fused with plastic, a film reel spindle, a picture of Michael Jordan, I think that's Michael Jordan, a rubber band, a piece of Tupperware Sharpied men's, a broken brass bat, a paintbrush, a half a pipe, a sign that reads, success. You want your public restroom key to be big enough so you can't slip it in your pocket accidentally, or forget to return it to the counter of the gas station when you leave. The bigger it is, the more obvious holding it becomes a marker of your need. We all see who holds the silver ladle attached to the key like a wand as they walk quickly to the locked door. But I'm really an aficionado of the transaction after. Not the returning it to the counter, but pressing it, relay baton style, to the next person in line. Here, miss, I think, is something for your future. We don't like to acknowledge each other in all matters, restroom related, I know, which makes it awkward. But embrace the awkwardness. Yes, that's me, whose heat you can still feel on the toilet seat when you sit down. That's my wet paper towel ball in the basket, my grease on the sink handle, some remnant of me in the slack part of the roll of cloth towels you have to pull down only a little at a time before it stops and clicks so as not to prevent waste. I want you to think of me briefly. We are not as anonymous as we might believe.
One more.
A hitch in space and time. From far above, you see a vast foyer of a grand mansion, a party, and people in formal evening dress being received. The camera, in a gliding descent, falls and falls and falls, focusing on the clenched hand held behind her back. The long shot now, a close-up of that clenched fist, that now opens. We see the key. The key is in her palm now, and that key fills the screen. Years later, the conclusion of a television show was lodged in my mind. The program, first broadcast in 1979, was American Film Institute's tribute to filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock. Ingrid Bergman, the evening's MC, and the actor in Notorious, clutching that key, ends the night. Is she wearing that same gown just pictured in the movie clip that we've seen? With the one final anecdote. She speaks to Hitch, recounts the setup of the shot. Remember, she says, you built an elevator, a basket, you and the cameraman, the long shot, the close-up, and the camera in the ballroom that night. The camera cut back and forth between Bergman and Hitchcock. She reveals now that the key captured there in her hand was, after the shot, stolen by Cary Grant, her co-star, who kept it for 10 years, and who then, 20 years ago, gave it to me, Ingrid, to keep, saying it was a charm, it had been good luck. She has kept that key, as prop, not property so much as support, a spell, a spine, all these years. And now another reveal, a close-up. She holds up the key, that key, like an exclamation point by its added string. The key, and she gives it back to Hitch, saying, ironically, yes, a joke, that it has brought me good luck, and perhaps now it will open doors for you. She walks out into the sea of tables to Hitch, holding up the key to give to him, as if the key on its leash is leading her, homing in on Hitch. The moment isn't about opening so much as it is about closure.
I require pockets. I don't like feeling unadorned, like I can't carry the things I find with me. Even running, it maddens me that most running shorts lack pockets. At best, they have the little zipper pocket in the back, but that's bullshit. I don't need to bring the car, but I do need to bring the key to the car, and my phone, and my Kleenex, and maybe a couple gels. What do people do with all their gear? So my keyring detaches and becomes two. I slide the slider back to detach one keyring from the rest, so I only need to bring the car key and no more. As you can see, I have two key rings now that connect and disconnect. It's like those silver rings magicians use, how they seem to chain them, how they offer those same rings, they say, to the audience to confirm that they are unbroken steel. Then with a flourish, they end up connected without our noticing. And what is there to say when that occurs but, oh. Thank you.
Thank you, my girl, and hand over your keys. Excellent keys. Friday night, 8 o'clock. We have one more event tonight at Fire Creek. If you guys are interested in one more reading, Hotel America reading.